What if the most important document in your country's history meant two completely different things, depending on the language you read it in? On February 6, 1840, a treaty was signed in a quiet bay in New Zealand. To the British Empire, it meant sovereignty. To the Maori chiefs, it meant protection, partnership, and peace. They shook hands. They signed the same paper. But they did not agree on the same future. This is the story of the Treaty of Waitangi, the moment New Zealand was born, and the moment a long argument began. Long before the treaty was signed, New Zealand was no longer isolated. Whalers, traders, and missionaries had arrived in large numbers. Some brought trade and technology. Others brought alcohol, weapons, and conflict. Intertribal warfare intensified. European settlers often ignored Maori authority. By the late 1830s, Britain feared chaos. And worse, losing influence to France. Britain had a choice. It could seize New Zealand by force. Or it could claim legitimacy through agreement. The second option was cheaper, cleaner, and more modern. So London sent a naval officer, William Hobson. His mission was clear: secure British control without war. On February 6, 1840, Hobson met Maori chiefs at Waitangi. Roughly 40 chiefs signed that day. Some hesitated, some argued, others believed cooperation was the only way to survive. When the signing ended, Hobson declared, "We are now one people." But unity built on translation is always fragile. Here is where history fractured. In English, Maori chiefs ceded sovereignty to the crown. In Maori, the word used was kawanatanga, a term newly created to describe governorship. It did not mean full surrender of power. Meanwhile, Maori were promised rangatiratanga, authority over their lands, villages, and treasures. To the British, it was ownership. To Maori, it was partnership. What followed was not immediate betrayal, but gradual erosion. Land purchases increased. Confiscations followed wars. By the late 19th century, most Maori land was gone. The treaty meant to protect Maori had become a legal tool used against them. In 1877, the story took a darker turn. The case was called Wi Parata v Bishop of Wellington. For the first time, New Zealand's highest court directly addressed the legal status of the Treaty of Waitangi. The court ruled that the treaty was a simple nullity. In other words, it had no legal force under New Zealand law. The reasoning was devastating. The judges argued that Maori were not a sovereign people in the eyes of international law, and therefore incapable of entering into a binding treaty with the British Crown. With a single judgment, the treaty that had promised protection was reduced to a meaningless piece of paper. This decision did more than dismiss a document. It justified land confiscations, silenced Maori legal claims, and ensured that the Treaty of Waitangi would be ignored in courts. For nearly a century. For decades, the treaty was ignored. Then in the 1970s, New Zealand confronted its past. The Waitangi Tribunal was created. Historical grievances were heard. Compensation was offered. The treaty became more than history. It became a living framework for justice. The Treaty of Waitangi teaches us something uncomfortable. History does not always break because of evil. Sometimes it breaks because of words. On February 6, 1840, New Zealand was born, but the meaning of that birth is still being translated today.